Hey guys, how you doing? This is Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, I want to finish up the Hailey Buzbee case. I've been working on that as well, but we've been covering the Guthrie case, and I kind of got sidetracked, and this case deserves a lot of attention as well. And there were some updates that I would like to explore in this case. If you guys are not familiar with the Hailey Buzbee case, I definitely recommend that you go ahead and watch my other video, but also it's all over the internet right now if you look at it, because it deals with child exploitation or a teenager at this point. And there's a great video that I'm highly recommending your way. I posted it on my community board. It's called The Disappearance of Hailey Buzbee. It's a 13 News special, and it's right there. Let me show you the thumbnail if I can. This is the thumbnail for that. It's done by 13 News. I highly recommend that. So if you get a chance, in partnership with this video and in partnership with my other video that I did, this is the second one I've done on this case, I highly recommend that you watch that video. So what I would like to do, guys, first is show you this one video that just kind of gives you the most recent updates related to Hailey Buzbee. And then we're going to go into our discussion real quick. And I do think that this is a case that is worth covering. So let me go ahead and play this video. It's got some of the latest updates. And then we'll explore the rest in the dialogue. And again, guys, for more in-depth coverage or coverage that could partner with what I've done, I definitely recommend that you watch the playlist and also check out that video in the that I posted in my community board. But here goes a quick little summary of the most recent developments.
Newly released court records suggest suspect Tyler Thomas had been communicating with Hailey Buzbee for over a year. It's our top story tonight at 10 o'clock. I'm Dan Spieler.
And I'm Birchelle Edmay. The Fishers teen disappeared in January from Fishers, and just last week, she was found dead in Ohio. Thomas led them to her body there, but he hasn't been charged yet with murder. And now investigators are trying to reconstruct how this online connection escalated. As Fox 59's Scarlett O'Hara explains, police are finding clues into how this turned into a deadly real-world encounter.
On the day 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee disappeared last month, investigators believe Tyler Thomas drove her across state lines, and documents show he reserved a cabin for 2 guests, despite claiming to police he was alone. Search warrant affidavits reveal, in addition to taking data from the 39-year-old suspect's car, police also took DNA swabs from the front passenger seat, the rear passenger seat cover, a hair tie, and dozens of photographs. The documents obtained from Ohio go on to say Thomas admitted he talked to Buzbee for over a year over online gaming platforms and an encrypted messaging app called Session. He explained Session requires a specific code to access account data, implying that deleting the code would prevent police from viewing any of his messages with Buzbee.
It hides your IP address, and because it's so decentralized, it's tougher on authorities as well, because there's not, one server or one central entity or headquarters that you can subpoena.
Professor Scott Shackelford leads IU's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research. He says while platforms like Session aim to protect users' data, they can end up leaving children vulnerable to predators.
It's designed with that anonymity in mind, but that is obviously a double-edged sword in cases like this. It's great for privacy, but also can be very dangerous, including for kids.
Records show investigators are conducting a full forensic extraction of Thomas's phone and searching it for session recovery codes in hopes of discovering exactly how the encounter moved offline and turned deadly. Professor Shackelford encourages parents to strictly limit the number of apps their kids can use, adding, however, developers need to be held much more accountable in an era of rapidly evolving technology.
As we study, as we learn more, I think it's worth experimenting and leaning in a bit more proactively to doing everything we can to keeping our kids safe in these environments, even if that means putting in some extra safeguards for tech companies.
The new documents also say investigators found a graphic child sex abuse photo on Thomas's phone. Both prosecutors and the Columbus Police Department declined our requests for an interview. In the newsroom, Scarlett O'Hara, Fox 59 News.
Now, guys, I've written books on manipulation. I've inmate manipulation decoded, another one, Breaking Boundaries. If you get rid of the jail or prison context, they're very applicable to any type of manipulation because it's a battle of control. And this is grooming is definitely a form of a very dangerous manipulation. Okay, so now let's move forward. So 17-year-old Hailey Buzbee was a high-achieving Hamilton Southeastern High School junior from Fishers, Indiana, active in school broadcasting and very close with her family. Federal documents and court-released affidavits show that 39-year-old Tyler Thomas of Columbus, Ohio, spent over a year grooming her online, starting on gaming platforms and moving her step-by-step into more private and encrypted spaces before ultimately luring her out of her home in January of 2026. First question that was sent my way is, given Hailey's background as a stable, involved student, what does her case tell us about how we define at-risk teens for online grooming? So when I covered the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case, and I know that's still ongoing, I'm just waiting to find out what goes on with the grand jury there. You had a youth that could have been already a vulnerable youth because she had frequent runaways. And sometimes, people that groom look for those levels of vulnerability, the fact that they're already putting themselves at risk. But now, with that said, times have changed. Times have changed, and the laws have to start reflecting that. And I think that's what we're going to cover a little bit here. But times have changed. A good child at home right now can already be being groomed by a predator because of the access that they now have through these social media platforms. Basically, they're bringing the predator into the home, into good homes. It's funny, when they were talking about Celeste Rivas Hernandez running away, the narrative kept on switching to her at one point being a troubled teen, the family tossing her out. It's like they started putting the blame on her as opposed to the person that could have been grooming her. And we have to take into account nowadays that runaways could be the outcome of someone that's grooming, and that actually places them at greater risk. And you're going to see that here as we get through it. She goes from a runaway to an endangered teen because at one point we believed that she had been connected to someone who could have been grooming her. And as a parent, it's tough because when you look back, you see that they have this exchange going on for almost a year, even possible meetups. And then the parent could look back and say, well, I should have saw this. And it's tough because it's all done in secrecy by individuals that are very familiar with that world. They're meeting your child, teenager, whatever it is, in the world that they're most comfortable at. They're entering the gaming world, and they know how to go from that public platform to those private direct messaging. And that is scary, man. It's scary because you even see that with people that are known social influencers. They just put anybody out there on social media right now. So the scary thing is about these parasocial relationships is what happens when the person has some type of starstruck with them and the influencer reaches back. You saw that with the D4VD case. You see that with a lot of cases here. But I would have to say, back in the day, they would look at teenagers that would put themselves in troubled situations. That's not the case no more because these predators have access to our kids in our home. How scary is that? And all they have to do is work on two things: trust and isolation. Trust, it's not that hard for them to build trust because if they start in a public platform like Roblox, trust can come through familiarity. Just the fact that they're on the same platform interacting every day. And then that trust will turn into some level of isolation. And, when you get someone that's 17, that's really never been a problem before, as kids get older, you're trying to give them more trust. So unless there's a reason to reset and go back to the beginning, especially in this stuff being done in secrecy, it's hard to catch. A lot of family, and we'll probably get to this later, I have it towards the end with, if someone said, hey, let's say something like this happened to my daughter, my first defense would be, and it is a defense, not my child. And it is a defense, because if I say it makes sense, it could be my child, what's that say about me? So sometimes when parents say it's not my child, there's doubt in their mind, but they're not saying it because they don't believe it could happen. They're saying it because they're protecting themselves from taking on the full responsibility of maybe preventing what could have happened. So it's coming out as a defense mechanism. It's not my child. But deep down, they know, because at the end of the day, even if your child was the best child in the world, you have to account for external influences. And that's when you go back and you start to look at, man, when were these connections made and how did I not see that? So I think if you want to create true change, like what Bo is doing right now, Bo Buzbee, is you have to acknowledge the fact that it's tough to say because they're young, but bear with me on this because it matters, that the responsibility is 100% on the predator. Don't get me wrong, it is. But you also have a way where the responsibility at some level could go onto that young, that teenager. As much as we could teach them, at the end of the day, they're going to make their own choices. And the reason why I say that is because the parents may wind up taking responsibility for something that may not be 100% in their control. And in this case here, that's why the laws have to be created. The laws will protect, hopefully predatory behavior, that's one, but also protect those young kids from making those foolish choices, because they don't know any better. Russ had mentioned something when we were having a dialogue that, you want to talk to your kids and you want to share with them the red flags so they're aware. And in order for us to try to build that connection, we try to share with them our experiences, but they don't care. I'm going to be honest with you. It's hard to translate valued experience from, let's say, mom and dad, because at the end of the day, that's my mom and dad. They don't know what it is to be a kid today. They don't know what it is to be me today. So it's hard to share that experience with them because they're not open to it. It's great to have that experience and think that I'm going to be able to teach my kid everything I learned, but they're going to find ways to push away from that message with excuses like, well, you're not me and you weren't a kid at this age. It's different. And then right when they start saying that, that they're not hearing anything that you're saying because they're already in a position to challenge it the moment you opened your mouth. So that translation gets to be pretty hard. That's why I try to look for people that are connected to my kid in a way that can provide that good advice, because sometimes the best advice, even if you provide it, they won't hear it. It's usually by the person. It's the advice provided. They usually look at the person providing it first. That's why you got to figure out where they get their influence from, and then try to see if you could influence the influencer, if you will. Like that, my older daughter's more connected to me. My younger daughter is more connected to my wife. So I can give my older daughter advice and she'll listen. The same advice could come from my wife and she won't. And vice versa. But in today's day and age, you have to be wary that, they're hearing you, but they're not listening, if that makes sense. So according to the FBI 13-page affidavit and supporting court documents, Thomas's first contacted Hailey through online gaming. So we have Roblox and League of Legends. He then migrated the relationship to Discord and later to Snapchat, where messages disappear by default. From there, he pushed her to Session, an encrypted messenger designed for, it helps you maintain anonymous activity, telling investigators he believed that if he deleted a specific long code, his session ID, technically, their communication could never be recovered. So you got premeditation there. The affidavit also shows this was not just online contact. So in June of 2025, Thomas' bank and credit card records put him at a gas station in Indiana and at the restaurant where Hailey worked, while Snapchat screenshots on his phone show him and Hailey discussing meeting up during that time. So again, this is bringing something public, right, on the platform into private DMs and now a public meeting. So he's already working his way through. So I'm sure, like, hey, if you want to meet me, this is where I work. And she may feel safe at the job for that initial meetup. And then they have those interactions where now eventually it could be the private meetup. So think about all this. You go from a private gaming to private chats. Eventually, this is all through, by the way, trust and isolation. Then eventually a meetup, maybe in a public area. And then eventually the private meetup. It kind of plays out again. But now think about it. We added another level to it that makes it more accessible because of technology. You know, technology makes our children more accessible. In July 2025, phone data places him in Indiana again, and investigators recovered a photo from his device, apparently deleted, showing a girl who appears to be Hailey kissing his neck inside a car. This is classic grooming arc. So you have public game, semi-private chat, encrypted app, an in-person meeting with secrecy increasing at each stage and his age minimized or normalized online. Question I got on this was, from a psychological standpoint, what does this slow step-by-step escalation tell you about how deeply he was able to entrench himself in Hailey's life and thinking? Well, it's scary, right? Because isolation's key here. He doesn't allow for counter influence. So he can't maneuver from the public platform right away, you know, like Roblox or League of Legends. He has to get her into the DM. So that goes to show you premeditation, you know, because that's always been the plan to begin with, you know. And it's funny because in today's day and age, we still tell kids, worry about strangers. No, worry about the person that you know or the person that you think you know. I mean, it's stranger danger may be less likely than being groomed and taken advantage of. You know, that's the scary thing right now. So again, they move through trust and isolation. They don't want the counter influence, and they're in the child's world, so they understand their vulnerabilities better than the parents would. And in some cases, maybe the child could be voicing concerns about their family, and that even helps them separate the child from the family. I think you saw that a little bit in the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. And even Russ, when we were discussing this prior, he was going to be on the show today, but his internet conked out, was all teens are troubled. They just got to know at that age that it's not definitive. You're bound to go through these things. But having said that, a matured groomer knows how to talk to them at a level that we don't. And the scary thing is about this all too is that I find this with females more, but nothing's ever 100%. Russ had said this before. Oh, we may have Russ coming back. Hold on. Hey, Russ, I had to start again, but I'm almost caught up. I already did the video, but I want to finish my last thought. So the one thing is, and we talked about evaluated experience already, Russ. I mentioned that already, but I want to also say that for a young girl, I believe some of them do mature a little bit quicker than boys. And they're able to connect with that predator because they fill a gap that the peers can't. All right, Russ. So actually, Russ, I was leaning on a lot of stuff we said before you got disconnected, so we could keep moving forward. We're actually almost right where we were. So let's. I started again real quick, but let's go. So on January 4th, 2026, Thomas booked an Airbnb in Logan, Hocking County, Ohio, for 2 guests before he ever left Ohio. Using Session, he coordinated a plan for Hailey to run away. And just after 3 a.m. on January 6th, neighbors' dogs barked. A dark vehicle appears on security footage in the Buzbee neighborhood, and Hailey's phone disconnects from the home Wi-Fi. Her parents later found a note saying she was running away and reported her missing. Through license plate readers, investigators traced the vehicle to a woman in Florida who said Thomas had access to it and provided his number. Cell towers and GPS records then showed Thomas's device traveling from Columbus to Fishers, lingering there around the time Hailey vanished, and then heading back to Ohio towards Columbus and the Logan Airbnb. Now, hold on, Russ. This is what I was trying to read before you got disconnected. I want to show you something. I want to add this. Oh, here it goes. So now listen, guys, this is extremely important. I mentioned it in my last video, but I got to mention it again. When Hailey was first reported missing on January 6th, Fisher's police classified her as a runaway based on the note she left and the fact there was no observed forcible abduction at the door. Under Indiana's then current reading of the Amber criteria, that meant she did not qualify for an Amber Alert, and she also didn't fit the Silver Alert rules. Roughly 2 weeks later, after more information emerged about an adult online contact and interstate travel, Fisher's police publicly updated her status to endangered, missing juvenile, and Dateline and other outlets picked up the case. Even with the upgraded risk level, no Amber-style alert was issued. Awareness depended on social media posts, flyers, and news coverage rather than a formal emergency broadcast. So this was 2 weeks into it, by the way. Hold on, Russell. I got 3 questions related to this, but let me get to the Amber part. There's one more section here. Then I got 3 questions here that relate to this because we might as well cover it because we're already exploring it. Hold on. Give me a second, guys. I got to find it because I got some. Oh, here it goes. Amber Alert flexibility versus Indiana's rigidity, whatever, and where Hailey's law fits. The Amber Alert system was created after the 1996 abduction and murder of 9-year-old Amber Hagerman in Texas to rapidly alert the public when a child is believed abducted and is in imminent danger. National guidelines require child at risk of serious harm, some evidence of abduction, and enough descriptive information to help the public, but they're written before online grooming and encrypted apps existed, and each state has flexibility in how to apply them. Hailey's family and many advocates argue that in practice, Indiana's Amber Rule are too limited and too rigid. They didn't see Hailey's case as abduction because she walked out on her own and left a note, even though an adult predator was waiting in a car after a year of grooming. From their perspective, the law itself needs to be expanded or a new pink alert created because the current framework simply didn't contemplate a kid leaving willingly to meet someone from a game. By contrast, Carolyn Alvey, one of the people involved in the shaping Amber law, has said there is more flexibility in Amber than Indiana is using right now. She points out that other states already interpret abduction more broadly in the digital age and use regional or tiered Amber-style alerts, and that the Amber framework can stretch to cover cases like Hailey's if states update their criteria and training to account for grooming, online luring, and tech-facilitated exploitation. In her view, you don't necessarily need a brand new alert color. You need to modernize how you use Amber, explicitly treating serious grooming and digital evidence as indicators of imminent danger, not just runaway behavior. So Hailey's law, which is what they're trying to create, the father's trying to advocate it, Bo Buzbee, sits right in the middle of that debate. The family's petition pushes for a pink alert plus grooming education, while the bill's moving through the legislature, like adding a high-risk missing person category to Indiana's Amber framework, effectively aimed to update Amber's use for the tech era rather than throw it out. So, Russ, I got 3 questions related to everything that I just read. So let's first go with the first question here. The first question here is, now that you have that background, because you didn't have that before, the first question here is, where is it? When a teen leaves a runaway note, but there is simultaneous evidence of an adult online contact and a pre-booked out-of-state rental, how should law enforcement and policy treat the situation?
So, I mean, I know that people want to hear that oh yeah, we can just legislate our way to something that's better, and I think that yes, I would like to see these things, but this is a case of closing the barn door after the horse has gotten out. I would say that it's really incumbent upon parents to be able to put themselves into the mind of a predator through tactical empathy and understanding what it is these people are doing. Putting out an Amber Alert is good for trying to resolve the situation, but stopping the situation from happening in the first place is a much better tactic. So while I think that we need both, I think that the focus here is wrong. This is what you'll see in every single journalism piece out there. Oh, more laws, more laws. Okay, well, bring on the laws, but understand that if parents don't recognize, realize, and understand what it is that their teens or children are being exposed to, confronted and affronted with, then there's just a much larger chance for that child to fall down into that vulnerable category and be whisked away.
Well, so now remember, Russ, they did add some avenues for preventive measure. One is early education, both for parents and children, and they're also trying to push stuff where pretty much a child cannot have social media at a young age, like 15, without parental approval. So I think they are trying to do stuff that's preventive as well as reactionary. But the biggest concern here was the fact that the resources didn't go to Hailey right away because they didn't do the alert, and they didn't take into account that grooming people groom runaways. All because they're a runaway doesn't mean that they're less at risk. In some cases, I believe they could be more at risk.
Absolutely.
So I think it's trying to note the fact that grooming should be considered, and basically grooming could come off as someone being a runaway.
I know. My problem with it is that you institute an educational program for that, and who's necessarily listening to it. I think that parents have to recognize, or I should say, what parents need to do is they need to identify where the risks are out there in the real world, and then educate themselves. Top-down things from governments rarely make any impact, and we see that over and over and over again. There's a lot of education out there, maybe not specific to her geographical area, and yet these things continue to occur.
Yeah, and then the other question that someone asked here was, what does this progression from runaway to endangered, missing to homicide victim tell you about how our current categories can lag behind reality when a teen is groomed and leaves willingly to a predator's car? I want to mention something. So I want to get a thought here. So obviously predators are predators because they lack empathy. So we have to realize that. They don't think like we think. That's why Russ said tactical empathy. It's true. They're not going to feel compassion for those that they hurt. And my thing is once they have made that contact, and now once they're with your child, that child is in danger for many reasons. But the big important thing that they're in danger of is the fact that they're a witness to what they've been doing, and the fact that they are now evidence. I don't want to objectify your child, but it's true. Hailey was sadly evidence, and she was a witness to his wrongdoing. And obviously at that point, the moment they go into that car, he has control of everything. And if there's a chance, because these predators, they don't want to get caught. They will go into self-preservation. They don't care. They're all about themselves. So at the end of the day, they do what they got to do, and they get rid of the evidence. That's sad to say, and not to minimize it to that level, but that is how they see it. Would you agree, Russ? The person in that car, after they commit the crime, will eventually be nothing but evidence and a witness. And if they need to, they'll take that person out.
Yeah, and that's where so much of the exposure to to the danger comes, is they are willing to do anything. I think that people tend to up until the point something bad happens, they project their morals into the world out there, thinking that nobody's going to get hurt. The proper way to look at this, in my opinion, is if you have a child, the child is at risk. After that, there's only degrees. And so, there's a lot of, parents out there just with blinders on, and they assume until something happens that their child is not at risk. So, do a risk assessment on your own child. What does that child have access to? Who has access to that child? Do you even know? These are the questions that should be asked, because if we start labeling a child as, oh no, this child is not at risk, then you're just fooling yourself.
Yeah, and I love that because the child's either going to be at risk from external influence or the choices that they make, whether it is being influenced or whether it's their own less experienced choice, especially nowadays, because you see a lot of younger kids thinking that they're older than they really are. And once they get hit with reality, you don't want it to be this, unfortunately, but once they get hit with reality, they really finally realize that, wow, this world is a lot more complicated. But until they go through something, they really don't listen. That's the concern. So you have to find a way to break that barrier with your child. And I think one of it is, if it's possible, to build that trust. And when you talk to the child, the discussions are not based on judgment. They're based on curiosity. You know, when you have those questions, your discussions are really based on wanting to know a little bit more about what your child's doing and no passing of judgment, because that's most of the reasons why a lot of kids don't speak up right away, is they're afraid that their parents are going to judge them for making that mistake. Like, I guarantee you, if let's say Hailey had met with him and she knew it was a concern, there's a chance. I'm just saying, this is just hypothetical, but just to get the thought out in generality, is she may not admit that she made that mistake because maybe she could have feared that, you know what, I don't want to be judged. My parents think better of me than this. I don't want to, I don't want them for them to look at me differently. So they wind up not admitting when they make a mistake that actually could have a serious ripple effect because they're more concerned about being judged. I think if you have that open relationship that allows for this communication to be founded on more of curiosity than judgment, kids will be more open. I don't expect my kid to be perfect. Therefore, my kid's more open to telling me when they make a mistake or not. But some kids may feel the pressure of having to be perfect in their parents' eyes. And when they make a mistake, especially something that could be as fatal as this, they may not say nothing because they're more concerned about being judged than correcting what happened. And Russ, when it came to the Amber's Law, I had one question for that. When the family says the Amber framework is too limited here, and the Amber co-creator says the tool is flexible, but Indiana isn't using it in the way that it should be, what would a truly tech-updated Amber protocol look like in practice for teens lured out by online predators?
So I think that, it's a fair, safe bet to say out the outset that they knew that a crime was at least in the process of being committed. So if you have a crime, that opens the door to a lot of different things that law enforcement can do. I think the fact that they just decided that, hey, this is just a runaway situation was self-limiting. If you can go in front of a judge and present your subpoena, submit your search warrant, and show probable cause that you think that a crime, has been committed or is going to be committed, then you're in that area where you can actually, bring a lot more forces to bear. For instance, being able to, access the online accounts of both her and him would have been, perhaps life-saving. We can't say that for sure. But what it does is it allows them to move forward with the investigation. The idea of, being self-limiting or engaging in what some people might call, pretextual behavior is just not cutting it with regards to what's going on in this whole idea about grooming and in this whole idea about, targeting, minors and so forth. And so I think that this is a classic case where they just decided to read the law a certain way when really they probably had more legitimate and lawful latitude than they were willing to engage in.
Yeah, and I want to mention something. Some of the apps or some of the digital forensics will be stuff that you may not know about, though. So that's the scary part, because the predator takes them off the main gaming platforms into Discord and now even Snapchat and whatever this program is, session. So what's scary is that as a parent, you don't want to always be in reactionary mode, like Russ is saying, so you have to find some ways to prevent. The problem is prevention also lies in honesty and trust between you and your child. And that's something I can't control. I could try to influence it, but I can't control it. So I have to do whatever I could ahead of time to build some type of relationship with them where I know that I'm able to create that proper influence. But that's the hard part. As much as you want to prevent, to be honest with you, a good portion of it involves that predator influencing the choices your teenager is making. So no matter how much I can try to do my best to educate and put measures in play to, make things a little bit more complicated to protect my child from bad choices, because we all know a child's going to make bad choices, they develop ways to work around it. They're a little bit more savvy. And to be honest with you, as much as you want to say, I can watch my daughter 24/7, I can't. As you get older, you're giving them more trust. So I think for someone that's 17 years old and looks like she was a child that was loved, didn't have reason not to trust her, by 17, you are giving them a level of trust where you figure at one point my influence or whatever it is that can guide her in the right direction, she's been doing it. So maybe I could step away. Maybe it's not even a thought in my mind that she's going to do this because she's never done it before, not that you know of. So the sad thing also, Russ, that parents may not be realize that I think is tough, is that sometimes the child that you think is great, the child that's in front of you that would never do this, could just be performative. How scary is that?
If I was to, hearken back to the words of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
And that's to be said for a lot of different things out there. So trust is not absolute belief. I mean, that's just dogma. That's just crazy. Is you have to verify that you indeed are understanding the context of your relationship with that child.
Yeah, and again, it's okay to tell your child, hey, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just the fact that I don't think you know enough right now to make all the proper choices. And it's not judgmental. That's what I'm here for as a parent. I'm supposed to help you. So it's not that I don't trust you. You could have good intent. But the problem is good intent can get bastardized too in this world. And as an adult, we know that through experience. You may not know. Now, I want to get back to the affidavit, the exploitation and killing in Ohio. So the affidavit states that Thomas first took Hailey to his Columbus home in the Victorian Village area, where forensic analysts later recovered sexually explicit images and video of Hailey on his phone. The environment and furnishings seen in those files match the interior of his residence. He then took her to the Airbnb in Logan, where additional explicit materials were created. And again, the background in the files matched the rental. Search warrants at the Logan rental uncovered potential blood evidence, which was collected for lab analysis. And authorities now say Hailey was likely killed at that Hocking County property. On the morning of January 7th, cell phone records show Thomas's device traveling to the North Country trailhead in Wayne National Forest, Perry County, remaining there for roughly 5 hours, about 9:25 a.m. to 2:15 p.m., before returning towards Columbus. Investigators allege that during this window, he dismembered and buried Hailey's body at that forest location. So, Russ, this is more technical here, more tactical, but considering the blood at the rental, the movement data, and the dismemberment in the forest, how would you characterize the level of planning and brutality in this crime?
High degree of planning. Not to say he didn't make any mistakes, but this was undoubtedly the plan from the beginning. And without getting too explicit, this is a hard thing to do. So he brought tools to do all of that. And that was his mindset from the outset. And so that's just par for the course for this type of predator. What we don't know is we don't know if she was his first victim or his last victim. That's the question. And also his sorry, I'm trying to get there. He rented the rental. It says a couple of days before
this even happened, right? Let me just see. So I want to make sure that. When did he commit to the rental period? Was it before or after he met Hailey or picked up Hailey? He picked up Hailey. I think he had already had the rental in play. If I remember correctly. Let me just.
Yeah, it was 2 days before.
2 days before, right. Okay, that's what I thought. So now, he booked the Logan, Ohio Airbnb before he ever picked up Hailey. Court records say he reserved it on the 4th and then drove to Indiana the night of January 5th and picked her up around 3 a.m. on January 6th to take her there. So 100%. And I like what you said. Obviously he killed her that day. You know what's funny about all this too is that I do think it was planned because the Airbnb, the rental, and sometimes if you have like a disagreement and they fear that they're going to go tell something, then it becomes reactionary to protect themselves from being reported on. But I don't think that's the case. I think the case here was that this was already planned, that he was going to do whatever he was going to do with her and then kill her, because also he seemed to drive to a spot that he knew where he could bury her. That's just horrible, man. His statements versus the digital trail. By the way, the lawyer is trying to say he's cooperating, that he's not involved in the murder because they haven't charged him with the murder yet. But the lawyer is just trying to get ahead of his sentencing. That's all it is, to show that he's cooperative now and that he recovered. He helped them lead to the recovering of her body out of the goodness of his heart because he wanted his family to have closure. Oh, stop. Just stop. I have a feeling the lawyer must have picked up on something that he knew that, you can't deny the fact that you're a widow. You can't deny the fact that you committed all these things. The digital evidence is there. But the one thing we have is they still may not have evidence that you committed the murder at this point. So let's not admit to that. But can we get closure? Do you know where the body would be? Can we get this done? But he made it look like his client was leading the dialogue. Like, this is what my client wants. He wants to make sure that they have closure. And then this will be something that they'll play out later on when they go to do sentencing. That's the key. So in January 21st, or in a January 21st interview, Thomas first told detectives he had been sightseeing in Indiana, visiting an airport and an apple orchard. When confronted with data, he shifted, admitting he picked Hailey up, but claiming he dropped her off along a road in western or southwestern Ohio at her request. Phone and travel records directly contradicted this. And when investigators pressed him about whether he killed Hailey, he responded, "I think she's alive and safe," then said, "She'll be all right, and I would like to talk to my lawyer too." So this wasn't a guy that was, like the lawyer's presenting, someone that wanted closure. He had to get trapped with the evidence first before he started to go ahead and start admitting some truth. Then he asked for his lawyer. So he's about self-preservation. On January 31st, he was charged in a state court with pandering sexually oriented matter. On January 31st, he was charged in state court with pandering sexually oriented matter involving a minor. And on February 1st, escorted by law enforcement and his attorney, Thomas was taken from the Franklin County Jail to Wayne National Forest, where he pointed out the grave site. Hailey's dismembered remains were recovered there and later confirmed by DNA. Russ, what do his changing stories and that she is alive and safe line tell you about his strategy in interrogation and his awareness of legal exposure?
Well, I think that there's just an element now of absolutely giving himself over to the process. He's resigned to it. I think he knows that there's an inevitability about it, and I think that that inevitability is just what crashed on him. He realizes that there's no way out, and so he may as well be cooperative at this point. I hope that they give that absolutely no weight at all in his sentencing. I don't know, what exactly they're going to do with regards to the trial, but the trial is certainly, some ways far off, if they have one at all. At this point, he's admitted to so much that it seems like a trial would be senseless. from this point on, he may try and, make himself not culpable by reason of some sort of diminished capacity. I don't know exactly what they have going on in that state with regards to that, but that's a pretty long road, and I don't think it's going to be fruitful for him at all.
Yeah, remember, this is federal charges across state lines. And then the other thing here, I like what Russ said. I mean, this is a guy that he just waited till the evidence was stacked against him. He lied in multiple layers until he couldn't lie anymore. And then he said something and asked for the lawyer. So this guy is literally not doing this from the kindness of his heart. He's doing this. So you're right, Russ. Eventually, if there's ever a plea offered, they could put down that he was cooperative. That's bullshit. That's pure bullshit. He protected himself the whole way through until he couldn't, because if you didn't have people that were interrogating him that didn't have this information, we would never know where Hailey was. Let's be honest. They had to go in there with the information they had to trap him into admitting, and it still had to go through multiple layers. All right, so now we have his digital behavior. And the groomings. This comes from the affidavit. So the affidavit and related reporting lay out a pattern of digital behavior that's extremely probative of grooming and sexual predation. It shows a deliberate strategy, selecting youth-heavy platforms. So selecting a youth-heavy platform, escalating intimacy, isolating the victim in encrypted spaces, and then attempting to erase evidence once law enforcement became involved. So Russ, from a digital forensics and child protection standpoint, which aspect of his online behavior most clearly distinguishes this as calculated predation rather than a misguided relationship?
It just goes, to the amount of time that he took with regards to, cultivating the relationship. And it just goes to speak towards, he knew what he was doing was wrong, because he, used these various platforms that were more difficult to trace, and that he wanted to keep everything secret. And that was, just part and parcel of what his end goal was.
I agree with you. I think the moment he tries to, everybody's on the gaming platform. So, but with that said, what's your purpose? And it's hard to prove motive. I just got to prove that you're on that gaming platform and you connected to our private chat. So I don't, the motive is really, we care about it so we can learn from it. But technically, it doesn't hold a lot of weight most of the time, because it's hard to prove. But all I have to do is prove you're on the platform, prove you have the private chat, and just connect you. And that's good enough for us to start pushing forward prosecution. But in this case here, I like what Russ said. The fact that he's moving into the private chats would be something that, okay, you're on the gaming platform. You may have all these angles you want to say while you're there. You love the game, whatever it is. But once you try to request that person to come into a private platform, that's where you start to see premeditation, because that's what's like, well, what are you doing here? Why? And then eventually see what the dialogues have to say. So platforms and progression. So Roblox League of Legends, that's where the initial context is. So Thomas met Hailey while gaming, taking advantage of environments known to be populated by minors and where real-time chat is normal. Predators often start with friendly banter, shared game interest, and private messages to build trust before steering conversation away from public channels. Then you got the Discord, the relationship building. Discord is a group DM platform heavily used by gamers. The affidavit and follow-up reports indicate Thomas communicated with Hailey and at least one other teen there. And in one separate Discord conversation, he told a different teen girl who said she was in 10th grade that he had depraved gore thoughts and very dark but stimulating thoughts, and asked if she was carving herself, self-harming, actively probing for vulnerability, and introducing violent sexual themes. So this guy is a bit of a psychopath. Scary thing is, as we think about it, is I wonder. I don't even want to think about it, but I'm thinking if this guy is like a sadist.
Oh, almost certainly. That's
That's why I brought her to the Airbnb.
Yeah. He wanted, the chance to do what it was that he wanted to do. And he just, completely manipulated the situation to get through his own sick, twisted fantasies, whatever those are.
Yeah, the fact that he's talking to this one teenager and it just says into carving yourself and all this other stuff. So then you got Snapchat secrecy and disappearing messages. So Hailey's family discovered a Snapchat thread between her and adult male after she went missing. This led police to Thomas. The affidavit notes that Thomas used disappearing message features, and some recovered screenshots show him steering discussions and logistics through Snap before moving the session. And session is where you have the maximum. You could be I hate that word, anonymity. What is it?
Anonymity.
Anonymity. That's where you can get the maximum of that. Thomas confirmed to investigators he had been using Session to talk with Hailey for more than a year, explicitly because of its privacy and his belief that it would leave no trace once he deleted his identifier. Session uses onion routing and decentralized networks so users can chat without phone numbers, emails, or central IP logging, and is marketed as a highly private messenger supported by the Oxen Privacy Tech Foundation. He also had KIKey, Kik, and Telegram installed and then deleted them, a pattern consistent with a user trying to wipe channels frequently used in sexting and minor exploitation cases. So, Russ, looking at this sequence of apps from mainstream games to encrypted messengers, what specific changes in a teen's digital habit should families treat as we need to ask questions right now, warning signs? That's if you see it, though.
Well, it is if you see it, but that's also goes back to verifying, what's going on. I think that, parents should be, careful with introducing them to, any social media platform, and all of that should be, regularly reviewed by the parents. It's just an absolute must. The idea that, I trust my child. Well, you can't trust your child because your child is not an adult and doesn't know how to navigate the world of adults. And so I think that, it's just, I don't know. I'm just kind of almost at a loss for words because
you know what's crazy? So, obviously the children are going to be very innovative now with technology, especially with the help of a groomer who knows it as well because they need it for their own survival. So it sucks because if the family is open with, checking on the what the child is using, and the child expects it, then the child, with the help of the predator, can become more secretive. So almost checking it regularly could pose a risk because then the child knows it's being checked and they could become innovative and change their ways if it's a dialogue that they want to maintain. It's funny. It's not like you're able to check something and everything's there. Your child's going to walk you through it. If it's secretive and it's being guided by a predator who's far more advanced at this than we are, we're not going to be able to discover it. It's not saying we don't check it. You want to still check it, but it's very hard to find it if they're just innovative. It's tough. It's not easy. Would you agree, Russ?
Well, yeah, I think though that, there's things that can be done though. I think that, making sure that you have, all of their passwords and that you can, control what they're able to, download and not download and, keep that device.
On devices about. Sometimes the predator has money and gives them other devices.
Yeah, that's true. But those things, but all of those things, if you're, if you're dead set on giving them that, there's still ways to monitor those things, I don't
think it's that easy though, Russ. I don't think
I didn't say it was easy. I said it's possible, if you have, I can go to, my internet connection right now and look and see, what Bluetooth devices are connected to it.
All
And
right, gotcha.
and so forth. So it's, it's not impossible, but then part of it too is talking to your child. Hey, if you're ever on there and somebody wants to private chat, that's an absolute no, and you can run down to them what they can expect to see from that point forward.
So
And the
the
kinds
more
of and the kinds of questions that they're going to ask, and the way that they're going to perform this approach and retreat, and so it's up to the parent. I think that giving access to all of that social media is probably, just for the most part, not a good idea. Set limits on it, time of day, time of night, all those kind of things.
right, but it doesn't right. But the only problem is, so let's say even with the Wi-Fi, when they find out ways that you're able to discover that they're doing it a certain way, then they switch their route. We see that in the prison world, right? You discover a route that contraband's coming in, and you want to be hesitant because the moment you attack it and that route closes, then it opens up in 5 other areas. So it's tough because they're doing things under secrecy, and the moment you kind of showcase your hand that I know what you're doing, this is how I found out, then you get them for a moment, but then they switch routes, and because the relationship that they're having with that groomer, unfortunately, it supersedes whatever we're trying to accomplish. I say a big part
but
of
the effort still has to be made.
No, I never said right. So I obviously the effort, you always want to be that obstacle. But I also think a big part of this also is, and this is tough, but it's a component of it, but it can't be 100% reliant on this component, is the relationship you have with your kids, which you don't want it to be a blinder. At the end of the day, you always have to have in the back of your mind that, my kid's able to do anything, sadly. But a part of this is trying to influence the right choices, because I could only do so much in regards to reacting from her wrong choices. But the only one that could really prevent her from making those wrong choices are her. Because even when we teach manipulation, it is a two-way street. The person that did it is 100% responsible, but the person who's being manipulated also has a level of accountability. And it's hard to go ahead, and I can tell you right now, the only way you can 100%, which will never happen, protect this from happening, is if somehow you could solidify that your kid's not going to make that wrong choice. And who could do that? No matter what measures you put in, who could do that? You could try to influence it, but they're still going to make their own choices. And then even if you follow up with discipline and try to put fear in them, you're battling a relationship that's a lot more powerful than most parents may believe. That's the scary thing. Grooming, they're grooming a relationship based on vulnerability that's extremely, extremely powerful for that young child. And again, that young child sees that groomer as they're the only one that knows me. They're the only one that sees me. You don't know them. Whatever it is, they start defending. I think if I get to a point where my child starts defending these interactions that they're having in secrecy, I'm going to lock it down somehow. I'm going to figure out how I'm going to lock everything down with this child immediately until I could try to figure out how to fizzle out that relationship and then report that to whoever I got to report to in law enforcement. And if that burns a relationship with my child in that brief moment, I don't care, because I think a big thing here is how the child defends the secrecy of that relationship. And I'll guarantee you that defense is going to be rooted in how that groomer makes her feel, which is what the groomers play on. And now the family's got to battle that. I don't have time to battle that. I'm locking it down because I can't take the risk of losing that battle. So I'm going to lock it down. If I have to keep my eyes on her for a while, and I'm going to report that individual, and then unfortunately see what happens at that point. Maybe the person can get in trouble for just having illegal messages. Here's all the digital stuff that my daughter or my child's on. It's yours. Do what you got to do with it. But in the meantime, I can't 100% stop my daughter from making the bad choices. Content discovered on his devices. So the FBI affidavit describes multiple categories of digital evidence from Thomas's phone and accounts. So you have sexual exploitation of Hailey, So explicit photos and at least one sex video of Hailey engaged in sexual acts created after she left home were recovered from Thomas's phone even after he attempted deletion. Background details in the files ties them to the Columbus home and the Logan Airbnb, which had the same furniture, wall art, and layout. Other child sexual abuse material. So he had investigators also found child sexual abuse material depicting a girl estimated to be 7 to 10 years old, separate from Hailey. And this supports the view that Thomas was a broader sexual predator, like you mentioned, not someone involved in a single isolated relationship. Searches and app behavior. The affidavit references Thomas's belief that deleting his session ID and messaging app would prevent law enforcement from recovering evidence, indicating he was technologically aware and proactive in hiding his conduct. And he deleted session, KIK, and Telegram before forensic extraction, suggesting active evidence destruction beyond the specific Hailey content. And then other grooming conversations on Discord with another teen. Thomas openly described, as I said, one of others having depraved gore thoughts and being stimulated by dark fantasies while simultaneously inquiring about her mental health and self-harm, a manipulation tactic to create emotional dependence and normalize deviance. This digital trail paints a picture of a man who deliberately sought out minors and youth heavy spaces, migrated them through progressively less monitored apps, produced and stored sexual material of a child, collected child sexual abuse material of even younger kids, and tried to erase his tracks once the investigation began. So you have the pattern within that context. And now, Russ, when you consider the child sexual abuse material, the self-harm probing, and the app deletions together, does this look to you like an isolated crime or the digital footprint of a long-term sexual predator?
I think a lot of it depends on, how much time he had to devote to this. Typically, the patterns that you see in people who are, serial killers is one where at some point they finally escalate, and then that person that they're grooming or trying to get close to becomes their first victim. That's not clear here. We don't know. We don't know if this was an escalation or merely a continuation. So I think that some of those things, remain to be seen. Right at this point, I haven't seen anything in particular that says that there were other victims.
Yeah, well, except for what I just said, what was on the phone.
Yeah, but those could be downloaded images. Those could be other people that he was trying to get close to and attempt to groom and those kind of things. So at this point right now, either he's a serial killer or he is a serial killer in the making. And this was, he got caught early on. We don't know.
And I definitely believe he's someone that would have been high level on Michael Stone's category of evil, because I think this guy was a sadist. I do. I think this guy got off on torture. Why the person was still alive? The highest level on Michael Stone's level of whatever psychopathy or whatever it is. My mind's going blank right now. Is the fact that they torture the person while they're still alive for their own gratification, and then eventually kill them, but not after them being tortured for their own gratification. And I actually believe that this is what this guy was doing, especially related to just some of the dialogue he had. And I think that's why he also went to that Airbnb. I mean, God knows what he did to Hailey while she was still alive. Okay, so there's three more questions left for us. Let me wrap it up, or four. So grooming as premeditation. Looked at over the full year, Thomas' grooming behavior reads as long-term premeditation rather than impulsive misconduct. He invested months building trust, normalizing secrecy, testing boundaries, and moving Hailey into communication spaces he controlled and could wipe, while also practicing the same tactics with other teens and collecting child sexual abuse material of younger children. The federal affidavit and related reporting show him not only grooming Hailey emotionally and sexually, but also grooming the environment, choosing apps designed for privacy, deleting sessions, KIK, Telegram, booking an Airbnb for 2 before he left, and scouting Indiana on prior trips, all of which points to an endgame of sexual exploitation and ultimately disposal once she had served his purpose. So, Russ, when you look at grooming this way as a year-long pattern of planning, testing, and setting up logistics, how should that influence how courts think about premeditation and intent in cases where the victim is later killed?
Well, with regards to prosecution, that's, entirely within the province of the jury, generally speaking, because what happens is they're presented, either with, one or multiple charges. And then from that point there, they have to decide whether or not the evidence weighs in favor of premeditation. With regards to whether or not there's any reasonable doubt with regard to it, and so the part that the court tends to get involved in is what evidence is going to be let in and what evidence is not. So I really don't see it as part of the court, except as it applies to the jury for the most part.
What I would add to that, though, is I think the premeditation is what tells you that you're dealing with an extreme predator. So having said that, he could have always claimed that killing her was impulsive. She tried to leave. She was going to report me. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I killed her. And that shows you maybe some impulsive reaction. But when you have
what that's going to be tamped down on, though, by is, if certainly no defense attorney is gonna let him get anywhere near the stand, and so it's going to be inferred to the jury based on the rest of the evidence. He can choose to say something like that, but then on cross-examination he's going to be destroyed.
Yeah, so, but what I was saying was that I know that. What I'm saying is that the premeditation, right, mixed in with the pattern of showing that this person is truly a predator. So, it's not a one-time thing. So what I was trying to get at is that it's good for people to know the pattern, the premeditation, because this is someone that is truly a predator. It's not just a one-off thing. So hopefully they allow for. It's good that he has those other federal charges, because that's going to put into the context of who this individual is. Because even if they try to hold him accountable, they'll try to hold him accountable to this one incident and trying to push it more towards a reactionary measure, because that's where they figure less accountability is something that's reacted to in the heat of an emotion or whatever it is. And that's where they have to come out with the pattern, the premeditation to exploit who this person really is. He's a predator. And he's someone, I think, that's actually, if you look at the context, and God knows what happened to Hailey, I think he's sadistic. The funny thing, even with Kohlberger, we don't really know any what he was going to escalate to, because he got caught on his first time. I think this person here is sadistic, and I'm getting it from that dialogue he had with the person that. Are you carving yourself? So God knows what happened in that Airbnb. That's what I that to me was the biggest concern. Whatever he was doing with her, he also did it at his house. But yet you felt the need to take it from the house to an Airbnb. What the hell happened to her in that Airbnb?
Absolutely.
How scary is that? And then where is it? I have, did I get the charges yet? Okay, here we go. Current charge and posture. Federal prosecutors dropped the original Ohio State charges and now have Thomas in U.S. District Court on two main federal counts. We have sexual exploitation of a minor, production of child sexual abuse material involving Hailey, and this is charged under federal child exploitation statutes because he allegedly produced child sexual abuse material of a minor using devices and services that move in interstate commerce, and then travel in interstate commerce with intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct, crossing state lines to abuse her and to produce that material. It is federal because both counts are federal offenses that trigger U.S. jurisdiction when someone uses interstate travel or technology to sexually exploit a minor. Thomas is alleged to have driven from Ohio into Indiana and back to Ohio to engage in illicit sexual conduct with a minor and to create child sexual abuse material, which brings it squarely under federal law, in addition to any future state homicide charges. Each count carries up to 30 years in federal prison, and he is held without bond. The FBI and local prosecutors have openly indicated that homicide charges are expected, likely out of Hocking County, once the death investigation and autopsy findings are fully integrated. Now, Russ, how does the federal child exploitation framework, interstate travel plus production of child sexual abuse material, CSAM, shape the leverage prosecutors have in this case and the likely defense strategy around any future homicide charges?
So obviously, there's obviously some overlap. So this could go a few different ways. I think that right now, Hocking County is probably chomping at the bit. They want their chance at a bite of the apple. I think that the way this is laid out, they could potentially try him for murder of a minor, both federally and at the state levels. Whether or not there's an appetite to do that or not, I don't know. But he's certainly in considerable jeopardy because he could theoretically get both the federal death penalty and the Ohio death penalty. And I certainly hope that that's what happens.
Yeah, me too. To be honest with you, I know and thank God it's not.
And for those who don't know, separate jurisdictions have been traditionally held by the Supreme Court to not represent double jeopardy. So there is no problem with trying him in both jurisdictions, but it's very, very rare.
Well, also Ohio, even though they have the death penalty, they don't practice it. It says right now.
Well, yeah. Up until recently, the feds weren't executing anyone either. And if you remember, I believe it was every single person on federal death row, their sentence, except for Dylan Roof, their sentences were commuted.
So it says here, the Perry County prosecutor and local coverage say that they anticipate murder charges in Hocking County, Ohio, because investigators believe Hailey was killed at the Logan area rental and her body was recovered in Wayne National Forest in Ohio. The current federal case is limited to sexual exploitation of a minor and interstate travel with intent to engage in illicit sexual conduct. Federal filings explicitly do not yet include any homicide count. A defense attorney quoted in TV coverage notes that any charges tied to Hailey's death could come from the federal level, but that's framed as a possibility. The only concrete on-the-record expectation so far is state murder charges in Hocking County once the joint investigation autopsy works are complete. So you're saying, can they do both federal and state?
Yes, absolutely.
Let me see.
But because it's two separate jurisdictions, so the Supreme Court has held that is not double jeopardy.
Yeah, it says, you're right. It says, yes, they can do both. In this case is a classic setup for that. Under the dual sovereignty doctrine, the same conduct can be prosecuted by the federal government and a state because they are separate sovereigns. That does not violate double jeopardy. Like Russ said, here's the feds already handling the interstate child exploitation count, production of child sexual abuse material, and travel to abuse a minor, while Ohio is expected to bring a separate state murder homicide case tied to where she was killed and found. In practice, when both prosecutions happen, they're often coordinated. The federal case focuses on the tech interstate exploitation, and the state case focuses on the killing under state homicide law, with sentences that can effectively stack or run alongside each other.
Yeah.
Hey,
let me just get back to the federal death penalty really quick. Just remembering stuff. So at the time, back in 2020, Biden commuted the sentences of everyone on death row except for I want to say it was the DeJoker brother that they did the bombing at the Boston Marathon, and Dylan Roof, and I think that there's one other, but I can't quite remember now. So I think he did 37 out of like 40 cases, I think it was, and so the death penalty was essentially scrapped. It's being brought back now, though.
Yeah, let me see. I'm gonna let me see. I just want to. Let me see about the Biden. That's interesting because that I think so the state will do the homicide and they'll do the digital forensics. All right, so I have two last parts here, and then we're done, Russ. And I think this was a great dialogue. I'll post that, but I'm happy I did this. I've been wanting to do this, but then the Nancy Guthrie case took lead. Russ, you were spot on. Joe Biden commuted the sentence of 37 out of 40 people on federal death row, leaving 3 federal death row inmates without clemency. Reporter notes that the 3 he did not commute were all convicted in cases involving terrorism or mass murder type conduct. The specific names of the 3 remaining inmates are listed in detailed coverage. It's Marvin Charles Gabrion II, and then there's 2 others. But the key point is they are the only 3 federal death row prisoners whose death sentences Biden left in place when he emptied most of federal death row in December of 2024. Is that what you said, 2024? Is that right?
Yeah.
That would be before he left office, right? All right, so...
Well, that's who's there now. He left office in early 21. So basically, what you have going on right now is they're actually.
Wait, Biden left office in early 21?
Yeah, January the 20th.
Oh, I'm talking about the year, Russ.
Yeah, January 20th of 2021.
Man, my mind is off.
I'm sorry, not 2021. 2024. Yeah. Sorry.
You had me so. I'm like, wow. I'm trying to think like.
I'm just wishing him away.
Yeah.
But see, the Trump DOJ right now has a lot of get up and go, especially for these child predators. And so I think that this is going to be a showcase piece of prosecution, and they are going to want to jump in. It's very early right now, but they have time. They don't have to present a charge of murder for a long time now. They have an endless statute of limitations almost, and they can go about it very carefully. They can coordinate with Ohio, and they can really bring this thing to fruition. So they're going to investigate, and there really essentially is no clock ticking on this to speak of.
All right. So I have 2 other areas, and then we're done. It's the last 2 parts. One is I wanted to ask about a possible civil lawsuit for the family. I know they're creating all these new laws, but I wanted to ask if there's a level of accountability that they can hold these social media platforms on. So let me get to that part real quick. Sorry, I put it. Oh, here it goes. I lost my spot. Okay, so separate from the criminal case against Thomas, there's an emerging wave of civil lawsuits against platforms like Roblox, Discord, and Snapchat, arguing they fail to protect children from grooming and sexual exploitation. Dozens of Roblox sexual abuse and grooming lawsuits have already been filed, alleging the company marketed itself as safe while allowing predators to pose as kids, groom minors in games, and then move them off platforms to apps like Discord and Snapchat where the abuse is escalated. Many of these suits also named Discord and Snap, claiming they became secondary exploitation hubs with poor safeguards, weak age checks, and ineffective responses, even when parents reported abuse. And families sue on theories like negligence, failure to warn, failure to design safer systems, and misrepresentation of how safe the platform are for children. Section 230 still shields platforms from a lot of liability for user-generated content, but there are growing carve-outs and workarounds for child sexual abuse material exploitation, especially after laws narrow immunity when platforms directly enable or profit from illegal conduct. In a case like Hailey's, her family could potentially explore a civil suit arguing that Roblox, Discord, and or Snapchat created or tolerated conditions that foreseeably enabled grooming, especially if they can show known patterns of abuse, ignored warnings, weak age gating, or marketing that misrepresented safety, while predators regularly use these channels in the exact way Thomas did. And it's funny, real quick, you know how like you sign a waiver, let's say you take your kid to a jump house and you sign a waiver that says if the kid gets injured, you're kind of held responsible. That's not the full case. They'll still be held responsible. You could still go after them. If you sign the waiver, I can't do nothing. No, there's still a liability when it comes to doing stuff like that for children. So same thing here. They may try to put something that a family can acknowledge, and then it signs off on the child using it. But that doesn't mean that waives their liability completely. It doesn't.
Well,
so Russ,
it doesn't. But okay. So if you look at the current framework, there's, literally hundreds of lawsuits against Roblox right now. And everything is shaping up. This is obviously going to be part of, what these lawsuits eventually become. Right now, unfortunately, in my opinion, Congress gave a lot of these things, not immunity, but I'm going to use that word for lack of a better term, with regards to whether or not social media platforms, are publishers, or whether or not, they are actually, controlling their content. And so that falls under Section 230. And so the lawsuits are going to attack that, meaning that, hey, this doesn't fall under 230 because 230 is primarily engaged with talking about free speech. And so there's a lot of things that have gone on, though. All of these social platforms have wanted to take and say, yes, we fall under 230. And because of that, we do not have to, police what's going on out there. Now, what they've done actually is they have created a situation for themselves where Congress does not want to extend 230 anymore, because what they've done is they have shut down people's free speech rights and started, relabeling it, mislabeling it, and doing all of these other things. And so just in a nutshell, they've wanted the 230 protections, but at the same time, they've engaged in wide-ranging censorship. And so that's what it's going to come down to. We're probably going to see at least some of these lawsuits matriculate all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see what's being said about that probably years in the future.
Kind of reminds me of also like the freedom of press right now with all these cases, when they're just bombarding scenes and making it more difficult to maintain the element of surprise when it comes to active cases like the Nancy Guthrie case. Hey, Russ, I just wanted to add a little. I didn't know that information you said, so that was good. I just want to add a little something to that because that's knowledge I'm going to take with me moving forward. Let me just, I just added it up. Hold on. I wanted to, whoops. All right, hold on. Let me just, I got lost here for a second. All right, right here. So right here, I like this, Russ. So what Section 230 is Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act says that an interactive computer service, social media, gaming platform, messaging apps is not treated as the publishers or speaker of the content posted by users. Courts have interpreted this as broad immunity that lets platforms get many state law cases, defamation, negligence, etc., dismissed early when those cases are based on user-generated content. What it still allows, Section 230 does not protect platforms from federal criminal law. So, for example, federal child sexual abuse material or trafficking prosecutions. And it does not immunize platforms for their own conduct. So design choices, policies, direct participation if that conduct itself violates the statute. Child exploitation and the child sexual abuse material trafficking carves out. In 2018, Congress passed FOSTA-SESTA, carving out certain sex trafficking claims from Section 230 so victims can sue sites that knowingly benefit from trafficking. Even the FOSTA. What's FOSTA, Russ? Do you have that? Is it freedom?
I think that FOSTA is federal sexual trafficking something. I can't remember I know it, but it's just not there. It has to do with that, the seamy underworld of their, of the social media platforms. Basically the problem is these platforms, they want it both ways in court. In court, they say, oh, we're just the neutral publishers passing along third-party content. But in reality, they're matching people together algorithmically. They're suggesting friends and connections. They're recommending content. And then when they see something that they don't like politically, then they're taking it down. And so that is the corner that they have painted themselves into.
So I was able to get it. FOSTA is a pair of 2018 U.S. laws that carved a big sex trafficking exception out of Section 230 and created new crimes and civil liability for websites that help trafficking online. So FOSTA allows states and victims to fight online sex trafficking act. So that's the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act.
Yeah.
And SESTA is Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. They were passed together and are usually treated as one package. What the law actually does, it makes it federal crime to knowingly assist, support, or facilitate sex trafficking, including through online platforms. It amends Section 230 so platforms cannot use 230 immunity to escape federal sex trafficking prosecutions and certain state criminal cases and civil suits under the federal trafficking statute. It creates new offenses for promoting or facilitating prostitution and trafficking using a facility or of interstate commerce, which covers websites and apps. And why it matters is before the FOSTA or SESTA sites like Backpage were repeatedly winning on Section 230 when trafficking victims sued. So Congress' response was to develop a shield. After passage, many platforms overcorrected by taking down or heavily censoring anything that looked like sexual advertising or sex work related content, which sex worker and civil liberty groups say pushed people into more dangerous offline situations and chilled lawful speech. So that's the scary thing. Scary thing is you create these measures in order to catch the act, but then they become more secretive with it. So that's what they did. They held them responsible. So it wasn't as opened on the platform, but now those conversations have been shifted to like a Snapchat or in this case here, sessions. And the last part I have here, Russ, is the burden. So Hailey's parents cannot meaningfully blame their daughter. She was a minor groomed over more than a year by an adult who deliberately manipulated her online and in person. In public statements from families in similar exploitation cases, parents often describe a crushing mix of grief, survivor guilt, and assumed responsibility, replaying every device rule, every misread flag, every night they thought their child was safe in her room. In this context, Hailey's parents are left carrying both the loss of their child and a narrative where they feel they should have known, even though the grooming pattern was explicitly designed to hide from them through disappearing messages and encrypted apps. That burden can drive long-term trauma responses, depression, anxiety, strain on relationships, hypervigilance with surviving children, and a relentless push towards advocacy like their work on Hailey's Law as a way to turn pain into purpose. Last question. When parents refuse to blame their child and instead internalize responsibility for not seeing what an adult predator was doing, how does that shape their grief journey, and what kinds of support or messaging actually helps them survive it?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that, they're going to want to be in denial, and I certainly, grant them that because of the immense loss that they've experienced. I think that this is just something that should be part of every parent's foremost thought with regards to the use of these platforms and what their children are doing. If I were to say something to the parents out there is, be engaged, be involved, monitor, trust but verify, and teach your children, about things that these predators are likely to say and do. Hey, what's your name? And so, they're going to say, oh, I'm Bobby or I'm Susie. And right. But that's just the first step, they say, oh, as long as I don't give my last name. But as they become desensitized to the presence of this person online and they share more and more, they're going to want to start, talking about their dog and where they live and the school that they go to. And then pretty soon, even if it doesn't come up in conversation, a person can take all of these disparate little facts and triangulate and figure out just who this child is. It's really, something that I don't think parents are aware of. I'll just tell you, from what I did in corrections, I used to use triangulation to find cell phones. And so what I would do is I would go and I would look at these guys most likely to offend with regards to smuggling a cell phone in. And then I would look at the names on their visitors list, and then people with, unusual names, so that I didn't get a bunch of background noise. I would run them through a profile, and then I would catch these guys as they were actually, posting online. And so some of these, I'm sure that some of these predators out there are as talented as that, to be able to use triangulation to figure out, where someone is, who someone is, what their likes and dislikes are. And if they know the child's likes and dislikes, they can, target and customize their approach to that particular individual. So, you should know what you're up against out there. And so just because, you don't think in those terms, don't think that those predators aren't.
Yeah, and I want to mention something, guys. One last thing. The big thing here is that the law helps the family, if it does pass, helps them get closure. You got to, when you lose somebody, you want to do what you can to have a legacy for them, so their life could still have had some impact. And that's what I think they're trying to do here. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing on this?
I think I kind of said it in that last little discourse, because I really think that, if parents really want to know how things work, they need to do that type of investigative research into what's going on out there. I know I said before we had internet problems and stuff here that your book, Inmate Manipulation Decoded, is a roadmap for exactly what these predators do. It's just in a different vein, but all of those different things relate back towards actual manipulation. And so if you know what some of these manipulation principles are, you can start to understand and see what that predator is looking for, what he's trying to achieve, how he's trying to achieve it. And, if there's any indication of some of those facets within a conversation that your child has had or is ongoingly having, you need to, restrict that and give your child the skinny and, show them examples, news stories online where this happened to someone else, because they don't know who it is that they're talking to. They just know that this person is coming at them with similar likes, similar dislikes, and that, it's fun to play these games with that individual, and their reasoning faculty can't extend beyond that. One thing that I talk about in manipulation a lot is the concept of projection. These children do not have their frontal lobes intact yet. They're still growing. And so they don't have true empathy, and they project what their good feelings are to the world out to everyone around them. And they assume that everyone is just like them. And we know that that is simply not the case.
Yeah, and guys, my last thoughts is the whole community was affected by this. You see it from the school to the community itself. I mean, there's a lot that we can learn from this case. That's why we wanted to stop here and revisit it once more time with all the details. But in the end, this is also about bringing awareness. That's the key, at least having the discussion with your children. I don't really know if this video is going to have all the answers, but it should have geared you to the right questions. That's the key. And guys, if you like the content, I do have Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. Russ is beneath mine. The link is to that's in the description, as well as top of the YouTube channel. As always, guys, stay safe and see you soon.